The graduation ceremony in the Grand Hall stirred memories I had not visited in years. As the newest recruits stepped forward to begin their lives of service, I found myself remembering the day my own journey had begun. Their nervous expressions, their uncertainty, and the anticipation in their eyes were all too familiar. At 13, I had no idea where my future was headed. My world was small, opportunities were scarce, and my life changed without warning when I was summoned to the headmistress's office. There, I was informed that I had been selected by the sisterhood for training. It was not a choice. Neither my opinion nor my mother's mattered. The decision had already been made. I knew little about the organization except for the rumors whispered by other children, stories of boys who vanished into its academies and never returned to their old lives. Soon, I learned that those rumors contained at least one truth. Once chosen, there was no going back. My mother accepted the arrangement. The sisterhood would compensate her if I successfully completed my training. I never saw her again. That same day, an officer in a blue uniform escorted me away. The journey lasted for hours. We traveled through unfamiliar countryside in near-total silence until a large estate appeared behind iron gates. This would become my home for the next 3 years. Inside, everything moved with strict efficiency. I was instructed to shower, change into academy-issued clothing, and report to my assigned room. There I met my roommate, David, another nervous recruit my age. Neither of us spoke much that first evening. The following morning, we were taken to meet Madam Principal Edwards. Kneeling before her desk, we received our first lesson, obedience. She explained that we had been selected for a life of service and that our training would shape us into worthy members of the sisterhood. We were expected to follow every instruction without hesitation. After the meeting, we were escorted to the academy salon. The room looked more like an elegant beauty parlor than anything I had expected. Women in immaculate uniforms greeted us warmly and explained that our transformation would begin there. I didn't fully understand what they meant until I found myself seated in a styling chair, wrapped in protective gowns and capes while my hair was carefully examined. Hours passed as the staff washed, trimmed, and reshaped our hair. Eventually, rows of curlers covered my head. Chemical lotions followed, then dryers, rinses, and endless adjustments. It felt strange and embarrassing at first, but the attention gradually lulled me into accepting the process. When the curlers finally came out, the boy staring back at me in the mirror looked different. Softer. More polished. Less familiar. Yet the transformation was far from complete. Next came the academy uniform. I was handed clothing unlike anything I had ever worn before. Piece by piece, I exchanged my old identity for the attire of a first-year novice. The outfit fit perfectly, as though it had been prepared specifically for me. Finally, makeup was applied. Nothing excessive, but enough to alter my appearance further. By the time the process was complete, I barely recognized myself. The final stage took place in dormitory Mistress Ross's office. Kneeling before her desk, I recited an oath that formally severed my connection to my previous life. I was assigned a new name, a new designation, and a new purpose. The words felt unreal as they left my mouth, but the meaning was unmistakable. The person I had once been no longer existed in the eyes of the sisterhood. When David and I returned to our room, we found suitcases waiting on our beds. Inside were uniforms, outer garments, and accessories that would define our daily lives as novices. As I stood before the mirror later that evening, dressed in academy attire and looking at my newly styled reflection, I struggled to understand how everything had changed so quickly. Only 24 hours earlier, I had been an ordinary village boy. Now I was a novice of the sisterhood, standing at the beginning of a future that had been chosen for me. Everything was designed to support the academy's program of transformation. One phrase repeated often by the principal summed up the institution's philosophy: our novices should always present themselves as young ladies. At first, adapting to the new clothing felt awkward. The unfamiliar shoes required a different way of walking, and the uniforms demanded constant awareness of posture and movement. Over time, however, the garments became second nature. They were surprisingly comfortable, and I gradually learned how to carry myself appropriately while wearing them. The same adjustment occurred with cosmetics. Morning preparations became much longer as I learned to style my hair, apply foundation, and use lipstick carefully without making it too obvious. Like everything else at the academy, appearance was considered an important part of discipline. I was determined to succeed and earn the approval of my instructors. As I unpacked the rest of my belongings, I discovered additional items that would become part of my daily life: sets of white undergarments, packets of tights, sports uniforms, training shoes, sandals, and formal footwear. Everything had its designated place. Personal care items were stored neatly beside the bed, while cleaning supplies were arranged in drawers according to academy regulations. By the end of that first evening, there was nothing left that connected me to my former life. The academy encouraged every novice to embrace a carefully cultivated image, and individuality was gradually replaced by uniformity. The first 2 weeks were spent in a separate induction program, isolated from the older novices. During this period, our schedules, lessons, and meals were kept apart from the rest of the academy. Out of the 24 recruits who had arrived, only 23 completed the induction process. One trainee struggled to adapt to the strict environment and the separation from home. Eventually, the staff decided it would be better for him to leave rather than continue under increasing distress. One lesson from those early days remained vivid in my memory. During a class, Miss Thomas instructed us to consult the dictionary and compare the meanings of several key words. We examined terms such as service, obedience, and duty, discussing how each related to our future responsibilities. The exercise was intended to reinforce the values that the sisterhood considered essential. After induction ended, we joined the main body of first-year novices and settled into the routine that would govern our lives for the next 3 years. Life at the academy followed a strict schedule. Days began at 6 o'clock each morning, except on Sundays when we were permitted an additional hour of sleep. The time before breakfast was devoted to preparing ourselves, ensuring that uniforms were neat, hair was properly arranged, and personal appearance met academy standards. Academic lessons occupied much of the day. Midday gatherings brought everyone together for ceremonies, announcements, and communal activities before lunch. Afternoon classes continued until early evening, followed by supper and study periods. Leisure time was limited and carefully supervised. Saturdays offered a small amount of free time after morning lessons, while Sundays were considerably more relaxed. Walks through the grounds, organized outings, and social activities provided opportunities to unwind from the demands of training. The curriculum combined traditional education with practical instruction. Alongside lessons on the history and traditions of the sisterhood, we studied household management, personal presentation, etiquette, sewing, hospitality, and various social skills. Physical education included sports and recreational activities designed to promote fitness and coordination. Throughout our training, appearance and discipline were treated as equally important. Every novice was expected to maintain impeccable grooming standards, keep uniforms spotless, and demonstrate courtesy in all interactions. Respect for staff members was emphasized constantly, and proper conduct was considered a reflection of one's dedication to the sisterhood. As the months passed, these expectations became deeply ingrained. We learned how to care for living spaces, assist others efficiently, and perform our duties with precision. Attention to detail, self-discipline, and unquestioning obedience were presented as the foundations of a successful novice. Looking back, I realized that the academy's goal extended far beyond teaching practical skills. Every lesson, every rule, and every daily routine was intended to reshape us into individuals who embodied the ideals of the sisterhood in both appearance and behavior. Another adjustment imposed by the academy involved even the smallest details of daily life. New rules governed everything, from personal grooming to basic habits, all intended to reinforce discipline and conformity. Every action was expected to reflect the values of the institution. Among the academy's most important traditions was the Vigil of Devotion, a ceremony maintained without interruption throughout the entire year. Day and night, one novice was always assigned to remain in the sanctuary, standing watch over the marble likeness of the sisterhood's founder. Participation in the vigil was considered both an honor and a responsibility, symbolizing unwavering loyalty to the order. Assignments were given without warning. A novice could be summoned from lessons, recreation, meals, or even sleep. Upon arrival at the sanctuary annex, they would change into ceremonial attire before entering the silent chamber to relieve the previous guardian. The transition followed a carefully rehearsed sequence of gestures and formalities that reinforced the academy's emphasis on ritual and obedience. The academy's philosophy was largely derived from the writings of its founder, Madame Véronique de Silck. Her teachings formed the basis of nearly every lesson taught within the institution. Students were provided with manuals detailing the principles, traditions, and expectations that would guide their training. According to these teachings, society was undergoing profound change. Women were increasingly occupying positions of leadership and influence, while traditional assumptions about gender roles were being challenged. Madame de Silk argued that some individuals possessed qualities better suited to supportive and service-oriented roles and believed these traits should be nurtured rather than suppressed. Whether discussing history, etiquette, domestic management, or personal conduct, the curriculum consistently emphasized discipline, humility, and dedication to service. Novices were encouraged to take pride in their responsibilities and to view obedience as a virtue rather than a burden. Life outside the academy occasionally provided opportunities to test these lessons. During our first supervised visit into town, we traveled in full academy uniform. For many of us, it was the first time appearing in public as recognized members of the institution. The experience was intimidating. Curious stares followed us through the streets, and not everyone responded kindly. Some people mocked us openly, while others whispered as we passed. We had been prepared for such reactions. The staff taught us to remain calm, ignore provocation, and conduct ourselves with dignity regardless of outside opinions. One incident during my first year became unforgettable. A friend and I were walking near the academy grounds when several local boys confronted us and pushed us into a flowerbed. Although the offenders were later identified, the academy also held us accountable for placing ourselves in a situation that violated its rules. The resulting disciplinary measures were severe and served as a warning to every novice about the consequences of disobedience. The punishment involved isolation, restricted privileges, and days of unpleasant labor. More difficult than the physical work was the sense of public embarrassment that accompanied it. Every mistake was treated as a lesson, and every lesson was intended to strengthen obedience. After that experience, I became determined never to repeat the error. Not everyone adapted successfully to academy life. Of the 24 recruits who began training, only 22 completed the full program. Some struggled with homesickness, while others found the strict expectations impossible to accept. Those who left disappeared from our daily lives, becoming little more than memories discussed in quiet conversations. For those who remained, graduation became the ultimate goal. The ceremony was the most important event of the academy calendar and required months of preparation. Every detail was planned meticulously, from rehearsals and decorations to clothing and presentations. Distinguished guests attended each year to witness the transition of novices into full members of the sisterhood. The morning of graduation was filled with anticipation. Hair styling, final fittings, and last-minute preparations occupied every moment. The gowns worn during the ceremony were created by the graduating class itself, making the occasion even more meaningful. Each dress represented countless hours of work and craftsmanship. When the ceremony finally began, the Great Hall was filled with guests, instructors, and fellow students. One by one, we processed down the aisle and took our places on the stage. Speeches celebrated our years of training, our achievements, and the responsibilities that awaited us beyond the academy walls. As I listened from my seat, I realized that the life I had known before entering the academy felt distant and almost unreal. 3 years of routines, lessons, friendships, and challenges had transformed us all in different ways. The graduation rites themselves were rich with symbolism, representing the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Each graduate publicly affirmed their commitment to the values they had spent years studying and practicing. When my turn arrived, I stepped forward, completed the required formalities, and accepted the insignia of my new status. The applause that followed marked the conclusion of my life as a novice. Yet graduation was not truly an ending. After the ceremony, we gathered one final time, exchanging farewells and wishing one another well. Soon, we would depart in different directions and begin entirely new lives. Some friendships would fade with distance, while others would survive despite it. As I waited to learn what future awaited me, I felt a mixture of excitement and uncertainty. Everything familiar was about to disappear once again. The academy had shaped us for 3 years. Now, for the first time, we would discover what lay beyond its gates.